and welcome back to my channel and a new video. So for today's video, I thought I would talk to you guys and show you guys some of the most disturbing books I've read. I've been wanting to do this video for a while, and I've been trying to like collect books to talk about and really try to think of what the books actually like, which books I actually want to talk about. I do want to mention that this is probably going to be a little bit lame version because I have not read a lot of super disturbing books. If you're really looking for super gruesome, super disgusting, disturbing books, this might not be it, but these are some of the most disturbing books I've read, which, you know, isn't too many because I'm still kind of trying to explore my thriller/horror books genre, which usually is the most disturbing books, and I have only just started my reading journey of those books. So this is definitely not going to be the most gruesome books or disturbing books, but here are some of the most disturbing books that I've read and I thought was worth sharing. The first book I'm going to mention is, of course, Stephen King, and that is Mystery by Stephen King. This was not the first book I read by him, but one of the first books I read by him, and it really surprised me. It was not what I thought it was going to be, and I can't tell you if that's in a good or bad way. It's been months since I read this and I still can't decide if I liked it or not. It was just definitely different from what I expected and what I previously read. But in this book we follow Paul, and Paul is a really famous writer, and he has written this really famous book series that he kind of feels done with. He kind of wants to move on from this series because, you know, he wants to explore his writing, explore his talent, and just kind of move on from that series that made him famous. So he decides to, in his latest book, to kill off the main character in that series, which is called Mystery. So he kills off Mystery, the main character in his famous series, and the fans are not happy about it. One fan particularly, who is obsessed with the series and obsessed with Paul, does not like that he killed off Mystery. So this woman kidnaps Paul and keep him captured in her house. And, you know, that sounds fair enough, but this book basically is her torturing Paul. You follow her as she does gruesome things to Paul, horrible things to him, disturbing things to him, and how Paul desperately is trying to find a way to escape and find a way out of this misery. And yes, it's really disturbing. It's really captivating at the same time. Really weird and odd. But after I read this book, I found out I think someone commented on a video that I did that Stephen King wrote this book as kind of a battle between him and drugs. So, and that's really interesting because in this book you have, you know, him trying and fighting for his life to become free of this person, and that's kind of like a metaphor for Stephen King when he wanted to become free of drugs. That's what I've heard. I'm not sure if that's true, but after hearing that, I definitely saw this with another pair of eyes. I definitely a little bit changed my mind on it, and I thought it was a pretty cool and unique story. But it's definitely disturbing because you do follow like in depth about all the gruesome things that she does to him, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty, but it's a unique and powerful story, I would say, and definitely a typical Stephen King book that just makes you think a lot after you've read it. The next book on this list is The Southern's Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This was my first Grady Hendrix book, I believe, and since then I've read quite a few of him, and I really enjoy his books. They are thriller/horror books, and this one was definitely lived up to the hype and definitely lived up to the word horror, I believe. I've only read this once and it was a while, so I'm actually really excited to reread it soon. I've really been in the mood for thriller/horror books lately and movies, so I'm definitely interested to revisit this book because it's been a while since I've read it, but I thought I would include it in this video because it was really disturbing in my opinion. So in this book we follow Patricia, and Patricia is kind of over her life. She is a mother and a wife, but you know, her kids are growing up. She doesn't really feel like she has them anymore, and her life, she used to be a nurse, but she's not anymore, and she doesn't really have anything. I feel like she's just over life, and she's just really feeling like she's no use anymore. All that she has is this book club, which is what kind of keeps her sane these days. In this book club, they talk about true crimes books, I believe. It's been a while since I read it, but these women come together and talk about true crimes book, and it's really funny. It's this cute, kind of picturesque looking town in Charleston, I believe, where I think a little bit rich people live, and then they have this book club where they drink wine and talk about true crimes books. And nothing really happens in this cute, picturesque looking town. You know, it's really safe, it's really ordinary, at least that's what you think in the beginning. Until weird things starts to happen. A new neighbor, a new good looking guy comes into town and really captivates everybody. Everybody kind of wants to be friends with him. He even invites himself in to be a part of this book club. He's really one of those guys that is so friendly and so neighborly that, you know, you would never think that he would be a bad guy. He's just really nestling in everyone's life and is becoming a part of this community, of this neighborhood. But once he arrives, weird things starts to happen. Kids go missing, and as I've said, this is a town where nothing really happens until now. Kids starts to go missing. Everyone starts to act weird. People freak out. People just acting differently, and you're really wondering what the heck is going on and what makes these people all of a sudden go crazy. And Patricia is slowly but surely starting to suspect this young new guy that she has already invited into her life, so it's kind of too late to do anything about it. He's already her really good friend. But she's starting to realize that, oh, this might be something up with this guy, and she's desperately trying to get other people to believe her, but of course no one does. And I do think it's a really cool book. I loved it. It was really odd and unique. One of my first horror books that I ever read. It was a little bit vague on the details though about what this person was, but I loved it and I cannot wait to reread it. It was definitely disturbing because some disturbing things were happening in this town once this guy arrived, and it was just really fun but creepy horror, and I definitely recommend it. You know, you have this cute picturesque looking town where nothing really happens, and then all of a sudden everything starts to happen, and it's such weird things happening that I can't even, you know, please go read it. It was just a lot of fun. Next book I want to talk about, I know I've talked about a lot, but I'm never gonna shut up about it, and that is The Return by Rachel Harrison. I picked this up on a whim. I've only actually kind of read a bad review, so I wasn't really interested in it, but then I saw it in a physical bookstore and I was really captivated by the cover. Definitely a cover buy. I read this, I think, without even reading the back because the cover just screams my name. And I mean, it looks so good. And I'm so glad I read it and bought it because this was one of my favorite books that I've read, like favorite thriller books that I've read. It was so good and disturbing. In this book, we follow this friend group, and one day, one of these girls in the friend group, Julie, goes missing. And, you know, people don't really know what to believe. You know, is she gone? Was she being taken? What happened to her? No one really knows, and they never got any closure to it, kind of. And because of that, you know, because they don't have any clues or whatever, people kind of presume her dead. But then 2 years later, on the exact same date that she went missing, Julie returns. All of a sudden, she is sitting on her porch, just like that, sitting on her porch casually 2 years later. Just that. You know, just that is really weird. And Julie has no memory whatsoever what happened to her or what she has been doing for the past 2 years, which is obviously really disturbing and really fucked up. I get that trauma can make you forget stuff, but she has no memory whatsoever, or you don't know if she knows, but she doesn't want to talk about it, and she says she don't have any memory of it. So the other few girls in this friend group is really wanting to know what happened, obviously, but they're also scared to push her. They don't want to pressure her into something she's not ready for. But the three girls decide to take Julie to a little weekend together to kind of, you know, make her talk, kind of, you know, be there for her, support her in this tough time. But they really don't get anything out of her. But they do start to notice that Julie's acting really different. She's not taking care of her hygiene, her hair is all messed up, her nails are dirty, she's looking really ill and really unhealthy. She's also beginning to show some disturbing acts that she does. That is just really disturbing and gross. And small things also that makes them wonder is, for example, she's been a vegetarian all her life and she would freak out if she accidentally eat a piece of meat. And then when they're at this weekend at the hotel, she orders meat and just eat it like an animal. Yeah, she's just acting different and talking different, and she's just really, it's really disturbing. And also about this hotel that they're at, or it's an inn, weird things are going on at the inn. They see shadows everywhere, that's, you know, and the staff is acting weird and different. Just, it's both the setting that's off and Julie that's off. It's just all the disturbing things. And soon enough, they discover that there is something seriously wrong with Julie and something needs to be done. And as a reader, I thought you were really confused towards, is this a fantasy, like if she's turning into something, some kind of creature, or is it just like reality that she's been kidnapped and she's just going through stuff. You didn't really know as a reader if it was going to be something supernatural or not. And that was really interesting because it kept you off the edge and it kept you wanting to read more. And it had so many disgusting and gruesome, disturbing moments in here. So it's definitely worth to be on this list, and I definitely recommend it if you're into disturbing thrillers. Next book on this list is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Of course, another Stephen King book. I think that in the future, if I do more videos like this, it's going to be a lot more Stephen King because I'm slowly but surely reading all of his books, and I've read a few, and you know, this is definitely one of the most disturbing books by him I've read. So in this book, we follow a family who moves I think they move from the city to this really calm street in the countryside, or like more by the country than in the city at least, where they, you know, they plan to raise their family and have a good, calm family life. And soon enough, you know, they start to befriend the neighbor, or at least I basically think you follow the dad more. You follow from the dad's perspective a lot, and he becomes really good friend with the neighbor that's a man, and they really start to talk, starts to share stories, and you know, it seems like a really good life they're having and starting to get. And this man that lives next door to them has some really cool stories and shows the dad this pet cemetery that's just up the woods behind their house basically, and how this pet cemetery has a great historian value, and all of the years people have buried their pets here, and it has like a really sentimental value to the neighborhood. It's really an important one, a big one, a famous pet cemetery basically, where a lot of pets lay dead. And you know, the family, the father doesn't really think a lot about it, but soon enough weird things are starting to happen involving this pet cemetery, and I even felt bad reading this. I even felt a little bit too much darkness reading this, because there was one scene in particular that just made my heart go dark. And it's definitely a really dark book. Not only disturbing, but it's really dark and horrifying at points. I just really warn you about that. It's a really dark book, but I'm glad I read it. I know it's a lot of people's Stephen King favorites, and I understand that. I really do. It was a really cool and dark book, but I don't think it's my favorite of him. But if you're into dark ones, like really dark topics and creepy things, I think you would enjoy it. And I definitely think it's a book worth reading, especially if you're a Stephen King fan. I think this is definitely one of the books that you should read by him. Maybe not start out with, because it is really dark, as I've said, but definitely one that you should add to your list. Next book I want to mention is actually a manga. I did think that I could try to have some different genres. Of course, it's mostly going to be horror and thrillers, but I do want to include a manga, so I thought I would include Death Note. This is volume 1 and 2, the black editions, that I actually just recently read. So this is definitely not disturbing in a way that like Pet Sematary is, but I did want to mention it if you're, you know, into manga and you want something dark and disturbing. This is definitely it. I actually really enjoyed it. So basically what this is about, we have this death god who drops a death note letter thing into the human world, and this guy in the human world finds this death note. And when you find a death note, you are responsible for it. And basically what the death note is, that if you write down a name in this death note, that person will die. The only rule is that you have to spell the name correctly, and you have to picture the person's face in your head. So you need to know what the person looks like and how to spell the name. And this guy is obviously thinking it's really, you know, why did I pick it up? Why am I not responsible? But then he kind of changes his mind and thinks that, okay, I'm gonna make the world a better place by killing off bad people. But it kind of evolves into something more and disturbing, and I don't know, I thought it was a really cool book, a dark book, but a really cool book. The death god is now in the human world following this guy around, giving him advice and stuff, and this guy is the only one that can see the death god, so he's invisible to everyone else. The death god is definitely a creepy one, a really disturbing looking creature in this book, and you know, I did think it was a really creepy and dark one. I'm really excited to continue on with this series actually, because I really did enjoy it. And I would say it's more creepy and dark than disturbing, but I did think it was worth having on this list if you are into mangas and you wanted something dark to make to your list. Next book is a YA fantasy book, because as I've said, I did want to include more genres, and I'm trying. And I actually thought this was disturbing, maybe like a lame version, but I actually was really scared when I read this. And that is House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig. So I loved The 12 Dancing Princesses, the original fairy tale story, and this is a retelling of that. So as soon as I found out this was a retelling, I bought it and read it, loved it. So if you're not familiar with The 12 Dancing Princesses story, I definitely recommend reading that first. It's a really short one. It's a really magical story about these 12 sisters that go dancing in the night. It's a really magical story, but this is twisted into a dark and disturbing story, which I just loved. So we have this royal family that's really, you know, up royal, high profiles that live in this castle on the rocks on an island. And originally there were 12 sisters, but one after one they keep dying. And you know, when the first sister died, of course they didn't think too much of it, other than that it's horrible, of course. But then more and more sisters are dying after another, so of course they think something is up. Or actually no, the father doesn't think anything is up, but the sisters think something is off. And it's creepy, it's dark, it's disturbing. It has, you know, the magic of the 12 sisters and the dancing and the parties, but also twisted into this dark thing where people are getting murdered. And it's so cool, and I loved it. It's definitely one of my favorite fantasy books that I've read, and definitely my favorite retelling that I've ever read. And it has ghosts, it has a lot of creepy elements that I just really enjoyed. So this is definitely, it's YA, yeah, but I thought it was really creepy and dark, and I actually was really scared when I read it for the first time. The next book is it's disturbing, yes, but in a different way, and I just thought it would be so fun if I included in here to have some fun recommendations as well. It's definitely disturbing, just not in the way that you may think. And that is Credence by Penelope Douglas. Yes, this is disturbing, but in a completely different way. Okay, so this book we have a girl who just lost her parents, and she's a little bit away from being 18. She's a couple months away from being 18, so she's technically not an adult and can't live on her own yet. So she gets sent to live with her uncle and her cousins up in the mountain, up in the forest, a long time away from civilization, which is just, you know, cool, but also creepy. And what's also important to know is that it's actually not her real uncle, it's a step uncle, so they're not blood related, but it's still her uncle, like they're still kind of family. So she gets to live with them and her cousins that are about the same age as her, and they're guys. And you know, you think this might be a cute family reunion and all that, but all of these men in the house are starting to get an interest of this girl, and not a healthy interest. So basically, and this girl is also interested in them, and basically she goes through them. There are some disturbing scenes. I actually did think this was a fun book. I enjoyed it. I know a lot of people couldn't stand it, but you have to like separate reality from fiction. And so if you understand what I'm talking about, disturbing things are that she's hooking up with these guys that are supposed to be her family. And it has some really good spicy scenes, but you have to also, it's kind of disturbing. The first time I read it, I was like, okay, it feels wrong, it feels disturbing. Yeah, so I thought it would be worth mentioning here, but it's definitely not creepy or dark, it's just disturbing in that way. Yeah, if you're looking for good smut, I definitely recommend it. And the last book I'm gonna mention is Verdi by Colleen Hoover. I know a lot of people have read it. Obviously, Colleen Hoover has become this huge author on BookTube and on BookTok and Bookstagram. She's so huge, and I think everyone has read her books. But this was so disturbing and so creepy. We follow Lowen, who is a struggling author, and then she gets this really cool opportunity to finish this really big and famous book series by Verdi, because Verdi can't finish it because she's been in a really bad accident and can't move anymore. She's been paralyzed. So Verdi's husband, Jeremy, contacts Lowen and asks her if she wants to finish the series for her, because Jeremy has read Lowen's work and really liked it. So he thought that she could be a good candidate to finish off his wife's series. So it's a really good opportunity. Lowen gets to live at their house, get really good pay, and just explore Verdi's writing. So she gets to the house where Jeremy and Verdi live with their kids and gets to be at her office and continue on her writing, I guess. But quickly into this story, Lowen discovers some dark secrets to Verdi by, you know, looking at her notes and papers and journals. She's discovering that something isn't right, something is off about Verdi. And she also thinks that she can see Verdi, and she thinks that Verdi is just acting to be paralyzed, and she's not really. And it's so creepy because you have scenes where, you know, you have Verdi, she's still living in the house, and there's a nurse coming and helping her out. But it's so creepy because all of a sudden the TV will be off, and then it will be on, and it's just Verdi in the room, and she can't move where all of a sudden things are moving and things are changing while it's just Verdi there, and it's so creepy and so I was so scared when I read it. I really was. And so definitely a disturbing book, but so interesting at the same time. Like, why would she pretend to be paralyzed? You know, like, what the fuck? So definitely recommend reading this. It's definitely not like Colin Hoover. You know, if you read other Colin Hoover books, it's usually definitely emotional and could be a little bit dark, but this is so dark and so creepy and disturbing. But I definitely recommend it. It was so good. Yeah, that was it for my most disturbing books I've read. If you have read any of these, or if you want to, please let me know your thoughts. I would love to chat about them. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in one of my next videos. Bye!